the faithful Hall of Fame, Joseph.
Deja vu, I just been this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time to go. Going new, and the search is a mystery.
Yep, that's me. Now I know what you're thinking. How did I end up in a basket strapped to a camel? Well, if you don't know, find out by clicking the little icon in the top right of your screen right now.
This is Joseph. Hey! Who was the son of Israel and Rachel. He was his father's favorite, so his brothers hated him and sold him into slavery.
Damn it, why do you have to include a recap in this video to negate my own? And if you could sum it up that easily, then why is Joseph a 3-part? Is it just because this has a Broadway musical? I mean, shit, your video is only 3 minutes long, and yet you're going to recap the whole last video along with it?
You see, Joseph was taken to Egypt, and Potiphar, one of the Pharaoh's officials, bought him for his household.
In ancient Egypt, it was apparently customary to choose your slave by hitting them in the face with a golden stick.
God was with Joseph, and he did well in Potiphar's house.
God was indeed with Joseph, and Joseph could really see that as he was almost killed by his brothers and sold into slavery. Because as our 18th century ancestors knew, God is totally cool with slavery as long as you don't enslave your own kind.
Oh! Potiphar saw that God made everything Joseph did a success. Aha! So he put Joseph in charge of his whole house.
Yeah!
And God blessed Potiphar's house because of this.
Good job, Potiphar. You chose to favor your slave that I prefer, and for that I will not free him, but I will allow you to benefit further from the exploitation of your slave who I favor.
Potiphar's wife saw how well Joseph was doing in the house, and she wanted to make him do bad things.
She wanted to fuck him.
Joseph ran away from her because he wanted nothing to do with someone who would try to make him do the wrong thing. This made Potiphar's wife angry.
And she also held power over Joseph and could have made his life much harder if he had refused her advances. Hashtag Joseph too?
And she wanted to be rid of Joseph. So she lied and made Potiphar believe that Joseph had done the bad things that she wanted him to do.
So just out of curiosity, as I can't necessarily remember from my own experience, what was the response to a child who asked for the clarification as to these bad things?
Potiphar burned with anger against Joseph and sent him to prison.
So I guess the moral of this story that children are supposed to receive is that if you want to succeed in life, you should literally fuck people in power when they make unsolicited advances toward you, or they will metaphorically fuck you and get you thrown in jail.
While Joseph was in prison, again, he did well, and the warden soon made him responsible for all that was done there.
So because Joseph made his bed and taught his cellmate how to make his bed, the warden decided that Joseph could be trusted to essentially take over operations as the new warden. What the actual fuck?
God was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did.
Except, you know, not being in prison.
When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh was having unsettling dreams. Pharaoh did not understand his dreams, so he sent for Joseph.
Hey. Okay, so I know that in the actual full story they explain how Pharaoh has any fucking clue who this Joseph asshole is, but that's nowhere to be found here. Why is this? Can't keep kids interested for more than 3 minutes? Why not? Disney manages that, and they have better morals to be learned from their stories anyway.
Pharaoh asked Joseph to tell him the meaning of his dreams. With God's help, Joseph told Pharaoh that the dreams told of what could come in the future, and he explained all the dreams to the Pharaoh.
I was wandering along the banks of the river when 7 fat cows came
came out of the Nile. Oh, well, and right behind these fine, healthy animals came 7 other cows that were skinny and vile. Oh, and then the thin cows ate the fat cows, which I thought were doing good. Well, but it didn't make them fatter like I thought a monster summer should. Oh no, because the thin cows were as thin as they had ever been. Oh, this dream has got me baffled, hey Joseph. What does it mean?
Pharaoh believed that what Joseph was saying was true. He trusted Joseph as a wise man. And he put him in charge of the land of Egypt, of Pharaoh's palace, and of all his people.
Okay, so his dream explanations were what caused all his problems in the first place, which then put him in the position to be beaten and sold into slavery by his own brothers. Then he got totally fucked over by his owner's wife, only to then get thrown in jail where he was supposedly given free rein and was somehow known by the pharaoh well enough to be called in to interpret his dreams, and then end up somehow in charge of all of Egypt alongside Pharaoh? Uh-huh. Well, that's the end of this section, but it's been a while, so let's just keep going and experience the thrilling conclusion to the Joseph saga.
This is Joseph, who was the son of Israel and Rachel. But he had 11 brothers who hated him and sold him into slavery. After being put in jail, Joseph told of the future of Egypt when he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, and Joseph found favor with the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh made Joseph a leader in his kingdom.
Oh, so the whole Potiphar bullshit didn't actually matter at all. Good to know. Glad I wasted my time on that when it wasn't even important enough to be mentioned in this recap.
Just as Joseph had told the Pharaoh, Egypt had 7 years of abundance.
Oh, so that's what he told the Pharaoh. Good to know, seeing as how we never actually found that out last episode. But what do the cows have to do with anything? I know that there's an explanation in the Bible, but the children don't know that.
Then the 7 years of abundance came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph had said.
So the moral of this section seems to be, I told you so?
But the Egyptians had food to eat because Joseph had planned for the famine. There was famine in all the other lands, and many came to Joseph to buy food. There was even a famine in the land that Joseph came from. So when Israel heard that there was grain in Egypt, he sent his sons to buy some.
Holy shit, Israel is Gandalf confirmed.
But Israel did not send Benjamin with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. When Joseph's brothers came to him, Joseph recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger. So Joseph decided to test his brothers. He had his interpreter tell them to send for Benjamin, who had stayed home. And then he threw his brothers in jail for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph let all but one of the brothers take grain to their starving households with the instruction to bring Benjamin back.
So upon finding this course of action rather strange and not as I remember it, I looked it up in the Bible, the ESV version to be exact, and found that there's a strange paradox in the actual story as read in the Bible. In verse 16, Joseph says that one of the brothers will go retrieve Benjamin while the others stay confined in Egypt. Then it says that he throws all of them in jail, and 3 days later he lets all but one of them go. I really don't understand this in the slightest and would love an explanation for this paradoxical thinking other than the Bible is bullshit.
But Joseph provided for his brothers' journey and gave them grain and silver. The brothers did exactly as Joseph instructed, as they were scared that God was punishing them for what they had done to Joseph so many years before.
I do find it rather comical that of all the things, they left out the Reuben I told you so portion of this guilty feeling. They also leave out a rather strange and pointless bit about Joseph apparently having returned all of their money to them along with the grain without telling them, leading to all of the brothers being scared shitless that they were going to be killed for stealing.
They traveled home to their father's house, yippee! Then back to Egypt.
Here they leave out quite a few verses pertaining to the brothers having to convince Israel to allow them to take Benjamin with them back to Egypt. As of now, I'm not really sure why this is done.
Now that he had seen that they brought Benjamin, Joseph was overwhelmed, so he released the brother who was still in prison. Yeah. But Joseph decided to play one more trick on his brothers.
So how does this all get justified with Jesus' turn the other cheek narrative? Because Joseph most certainly does not, and rather mercilessly fucks with his brothers here.
He sent the brothers away but told his servant to hide his silver cup in Benjamin's bag. Then Joseph told the servant to go after the brothers and retrieve the cup. The brothers hadn't traveled far before the servant stopped them and accused them of stealing the cup. Joseph could no longer control himself before his attendants. He made them leave so he could be alone with his brothers, and he told his brothers who he really was. Ta-da!
Now I'm starting to see why they left out the whole convincing Israel part. They do so because they also leave out the payoff for that whole section. When convincing their father, he makes all the brothers promise to bring Benjamin back, and they make a really big deal out of that promise. And then when they come back after having the cup discovered, Joseph says that Benjamin will have to stay permanently, which forces the brothers to beg for their brother in the form of an interesting musical number.
Oh no, not he. How you can accuse him is a mystery. Save him, save me. Benjamin is straighter than Detroit palm tree.
I hear these steel drums sing their song. They're singing and you know you got it wrong. I hear the voice of the yellow bird singing in the tree. This is quite absurd. Oh yes, it's true.
It's true.
Benjamin is straighter than the big bamboo. No ifs,
No ifs,
no buts,
no buts.
Benjamin is honest as coconuts.
Okay, maybe the musical number is only in the Andrew Lloyd Webber version.
He told them of his life and all he had experienced, and he forgave them for what they had done.
After having mercilessly fucked with them.
God was with Joseph and took care of him and showed him favor.
Well, that finally concludes our time with Joseph. To review, this version cuts out a lot of the explanatory sections of the story, causing so many leaps in understanding that it would be difficult for any adult, or let alone any child, to legitimately follow along without prior knowledge of the story. In addition to this, there's not any good moral to this story, especially for children, and as such, because it's not historical and has no legitimate moral teaching, and isn't even all that entertaining in any true sense of the word, it has no real reason to be shown other than childhood indoctrination. While it has been quite some time since the last episode of this series was released, going forward my goal is going to be to produce one episode of this series each week alongside another unrelated video each week to satisfy fans of this series as well as fans of my other content. My upload schedule has been rather sporadic lately, but I'm going to be attempting to streamline it coming soon. Thank you all for all of your continued support. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment down below. Subscribe for future content, and as always, have a blessed day, fellow heathens.